ranking the JoJo villains on evil. Now, evil itself is hard to quantify. It's not as simple as, you know, something that people say is black Air Force energy, because you know what? I wore those. They were like the cheapest Air Forces at a time. And you know, I'm not a world destroyer. Well, as far as you know, and as far as I know. See, evil is multifaceted, nuanced, and all those other keywords that are used in video essays. But these are anime characters, so, you know, it's JoJo also. We're gonna go off of what they did for their goals and what they did just because. That's how you define evil, at least in this case. So, first off, we're starting off with part 1, Dio. His goals as the years go on, it changed a lot here and there because of the situation that Jonathan keeps putting him in. Or, well, more so he keeps putting himself in. Originally, he was going to take over the Joestar fortune and then use that to do whatever, really. He most likely still wanted to take over the world like he did before, but the scope was on a regular level of people evil. It wasn't until seeing the power of the stone mask that he upped the ante and he saw his sights and he was like, yes, let me put this out into the entire world, because in that moment it was attainable. So what's the stuff that we do see him doing for his goals? Well, ruining Jonathan's life alongside poisoning George Joestar both contributed to his game. There's some stuff that he did under the guise of, this is my plan. But you could tell that that really wasn't the case, and sometimes he just really hated Jonathan. Pretending to be his brother, plotting on his downfall, both evil things, yeah. But anyone could do that. I could do that. You could do that if you wanted to. And then there's taking out the Joestar Manor, drinking people to repair his body, and experimenting to further his knowledge about biology and all that were all evils that he believed that he needed to do. Well, especially the last part, because that's how he needed to splice his head onto Jonathan's body. But yeah, but let's be honest, you know, there's a lot of stuff that he did want to do just because, but it just did contribute to his goal. He was enjoying drinking people. He's a freak like that. As for what he did on the side, he was basically harassing women that didn't want him, and he killed the dog. That's not as evil as we thought. It's kind of weak sauce by Dio, but yeah. Next, we have Cars. Cars wanted to overcome the sun. Well, you know, that's not a bad goal, and he's a genius. I wonder how he'll figure that out. Experimenting. Lots of experimenting. Now, his fellow Pillarmen didn't like this, and he gave them the ultimatum, you know. Stand with me or die. The proposition that Cars gave them was basically, allow me to help us tap into immortality or die trying to stop me. And that's the thing. Ultimate Cars wasn't even exactly in a disadvantageous position. But I think we can understand, you know, his people have everything, intelligence, strength, and they live for an unreasonably long amount of time. They have all types of stuff they can do with their body, all this and more, but they can't embrace the sun. You know, something as simple as that. If they were to ever make strides in general, they could be susceptible to conquest if their enemies use the sun against them, you know? And that could be easily done because, you know, referring to the art of war and all the stuff that they had going on there, most likely people would be like, oh yeah, let's fight the Pillarmen in the sun. So yeah, I get it. Cars wanted to embrace the sun because at that point, he has no weaknesses that the rest of the world could produce. With that, he wanted to establish his position over everyone as the ultimate life form. That I don't agree with. You know, which it's not only global, it's biological domination, you know? How evil is that? Well, I mean, humanity currently, like, establishes itself over everything else, you know? So if dogs got smarter and took over, we'd probably call them evil, but they probably have a lot to say, too, about us. I imagine there's someone out there that's like, oh, that's so real. Come on, man. Let's be real. Anyways, he wiped his people off of the face of the earth. Last time I checked, that's genocide. He also killed a bunch of Hamon users and various other people. Which, yeah, evil. But that evil? I don't know. Kid Buu wiped out, like, everyone on Earth, you know? Cars can't be that bad. But Caleb, Kid Buu set an unreasonable standard. Yeah, I know. That's the point. Next, Dio in part 3. Well, you know, it's confirmed that Dio's reach and flesh buds have reached a ridiculous range. He has power in the underworld. He has power in politics. If he wanted to say so on insane things, he most likely could have done those things. But he didn't, because Dio was mainly focused on regenerating, researching, and ruining the Joestars. Honestly speaking, we don't really have that much to go off of because Dio wasn't even in the part like that. The stand stand users he sends out and hires are bonkers, but I guess it's not really anything to care to pin down. Before the later retcon of Dio and the addition of Heaven, what we knew is that this guy wants to take over and will if left unchecked. Evil, yeah, he had the tools to do everything, but did he? No, he did a lot though. I think Phantom Blood Dio did more on paper, but yeah. Next up, Yoshikage Kira, evil. Unfortunately, about the upbringing and all that, sure, of course, but the whole Kira family's cooked. Completely cooked, let's be honest here. Yoshikage is cooked for even getting to start up whatever the heck he was doing. And Yoshihiro, his father, is worse for letting his kid do this. Evil. There was no purpose in this. He really wanted to kill those people. Evil. Evil man. With a pretty cool stand. Send him to the top of evil. Next up, Diavolo. And you know, as for Diavolo's case, no. Let me just tell you what he did, and we'll conclude at the end, you know? But first, there was no goal. Yes, Diavolo wanted to keep his identity hidden later on, but that wasn't important before, as he was already a nobody. No one knew Diavolo. He was a nobody. After stealing a bunch of stand arrows, selling all but one to Enya for, more money, Diavolo created Passione, most likely, had a gang that wasn't really enough, so, to up his stuff, he had the goal of erasing all of the other mafia families in Italy. And how Diavolo moved, you can honestly describe him as one of the most ruthless gangsters out there. But, honestly speaking, aside from the stand stuff, this stuff could have just happened, Like, if one guy on Earth, if he was just to be like, oh, I'm gonna take out all the gangs and da-da-da-da-da. I don't know, it's very possible. They could do that. Like, yeah, he had Chocolata do some crazy stuff, but this isn't like evil you've never seen before, These are possible things. Very possible. So I'm gonna say this is probably on the higher end, but eh. And finally, Pucci, because y'all aren't caught up, so what's the point of me mentioning other two? You're not caught up, bro. So the goal with Heaven was so that every human knows their fate and is able to accept that, I guess. Also, let's just get this straight, all right? Made in Heaven didn't kill everyone in the universe. That's literally not even how it works. Made in Heaven only works on inorganic materials. And anyone who died in the transition, like that wasn't really a plan. That wasn't like his goal to let that happen. But it was bound to happen if everything was gonna go all freaking fast. Also, his entire plan to take out the Joestar lineage so that they wouldn't carry over and mess with his plan and all for the fact that he just wanted to get his get back too. That's that. But his organization of stand users and the all-out plan against Jolene does say a lot about Pucci. And in terms of evil, I'd go on to say that Dio and Pucci are most likely comparable, but only if we count the entirety of Pucci. He didn't really get onto real world damaging stuff until later on. Meanwhile, Dio in part 3 had already had a lot in place in the world. So how would I rank it? Well, firstly, the entirety of Dio's character, all of Dio, is X tier. He's the most, like, no one is hating more. No one is putting more freaking numbers on the board than Dio, especially as long as he's been doing it, That much numbers over this amount of time? Dio is like the evil LeBron of JoJo. Straight consistency, points on the board, the GOAT. As for the characters in their respective parts, I feel like Dio Brando or Part 1 Dio is at the bottom with the potential to do more in the future, which he did. Diavolo should be right after that because he had people carry out the worst possible things for the most part. And rather than him deal with it or do it, if you want to gauge on what I mean, for example, I think Chocolata, off of how Chocolata is most likely above Diavolo in terms of just straight, like, Chocolata's sick. All right, off of intent and enjoyment alone, Chocolata is disgusting. All right, after that, Yoshikage Kira. Only reason why he's not higher is because of the other characters being as wild as they are. Pucci is next up. I feel like this goes without saying since we talked about it earlier. And the Heaven plan is not as bad as what's next, which is Cars in the number 2 with the potential to be higher, but at the same time, everyone else had potential to, and they could also be higher. The only thing I'd see, like, changing up is if people got to their full potential, Kira would still be most likely at the bottom because of how limited his evil was and like the range. Dio had a worldwide scope. Diavolo was down to do more if he got King Crimson Requiem, but he didn't. Cars would have legitimately taken over the world uncontested, and it would have been terrifying. And at number 1, even though I did say he ain't do that much, it's Dio in part 3. Yes, we didn't see Dio in part 3 act out as much or do much and yada yada, but his range is undeniable. When he was underwater, he indirectly got George Joestar killed. He also destroyed the lives of the Nijimuras in his death, and that most likely happened with a lot of other families that we'll never know about. His Joestar hit list is wild. He's the reason why Pucci even exists right now. It's almost as if you couldn't escape Dio. And in Stardust Crusaders, you can honestly see that with how many of Dio's mercenaries would just pop up, that was true. Now, we could look further into the other characters and really gotten into the case of like Yoshikage Kira for the sake of nuance and just yada yada. But that's way too extra. It's way too serious. And that's it. So this is my lineup. Enjoy it. If you don't, I don't really know. What are you gonna do? Thank you all for watching. Hopefully I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, peace out and Godspeed.